Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News channel. Just checking the channels to make sure that we're running everywhere. It looks like a bit of a delay again on the Rumble platform, but hopefully it catches and we go live over there. Sometimes when I set the stuff up early, it doesn't fire right. We have a lot to cover tonight, though. Mike McCarrick is joining us to talk about Iran and also, mostly, I think, tonight, Ukraine. So I'm a little concerned that no, we are live, so we're good to go. And we're firing on all cylinders, talking automotive talk, because I've been laying it in my car most of the day, still affecting repairs. But that's a story for another time. We've got a lot of important war news or peace news. I don't know what it is over in Iran, and I'm not exactly sure what to expect coming out of Ukraine right now either, because we've seen escalation and Ukraine gaining ground and support, as I've said in the last couple of nights. So let's take a short break. We'll get configured here, come back on the other side with Mike McCarrick.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Just before we get into tonight's feature reports, just a note on a fairly high-profile news story that reached a new milestone today. Frank Stronach, founder of Magna International, prominent Canadian businessman, found guilty today on one count of indecent assault and one count of sexual assault. Found not guilty on, I believe, 12 other charges. He still has to go through sentencing, and I just wanted to touch on that tonight before we get into the main topic of discussion, Iran and Ukraine. And let's bring in Mike. Hello, sir. Welcome back. Thank you.
How is everybody tonight?
Well, I'm okay. I think everybody in the chat's doing well.
Hope your car is not too bad.
My car is 20 years old, and I'm not giving it up. But
sure.
on Canadian roads, there tends to be a little rust, so you run into a few twists and turns when you're loosening the bolts.
One of my cars is 16 years old, but it's still running great. So I don't know why I would give it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just rebuilding the whole front end on it so that I can keep it.
Gotcha.
But anyway, those are my problems, and the world has bigger problems than mine, and that's why you're here tonight. Where do you want to start? I think maybe we should talk about Iran off the top, because it looks like Israel now has reached a ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah in Lebanon. So maybe. Yeah. So that might mean that the negotiations can proceed, which is, I think, part of the first section in that 14-point memorandum of understanding. What are your thoughts as we look at that situation tonight?
Well, I mean, to set the stage, I don't know how many people we tend to not remember things that were not that long ago. Um, but I don't know how many of you remember the negotiated settlement to get the United States out of Afghanistan, which was a Trump negotiation. It was one of the last things he did in his first term. But it famously or infamously did not include the Afghani government that we helped support and form and educate and give, legal, ethical, and economic help. And, we did all sorts of things to help build an Afghani government. And then when Trump decided he wanted out, he just negotiated with the Taliban. That's all he negotiated with. He left out one of the major players. So in this one, it's not going over well at all in certain segments because Trump negotiated with the Iranians and just completely ignored Israel. So the Israelis are not thrilled. And then in the document, it is equating the Hezbollah and Hamas and Houthis, the groups that Iran kind of sort of runs underneath the table, with Israel as that same category for the United States. So the Israelis are not happy. Benjamin Netanyahu's up for an election here soon. Was it August, September? So that whole angle of this is astonishing. And I don't know how many people remember, just every president going back for decades, the support for Israel, this sort of turnaround from Trump. And one of the things he was elected on was his supposed support for Israel. And now Trump is managing to annoy inside of the United States all of his voting blocks. So his current standing of about 38 to 42% popularity inside the United States is going to go down even further. But we don't even know if we have a peace treaty yet. So maybe Israel had a ceasefire, but Thursday night, Iran announced that they were not going to send anyone to Switzerland. And JD Vance and a whole bunch of people were at probably Bolling Air Force Base, but they might have been somewhere else, one of the places near Washington, D.C., getting ready to leave. And they canceled the trip because the Iranians weren't going to be there. So I don't know when that's going to start. That was supposed to start today. It's not, obviously, since it hasn't started yet. But I don't know what to make of this. That document looks like everything is worse. Iran's in a stronger position now than it was in February. The United States, on paper, they claim, Hegseth, Dumb McNamara claims that we spent $30 billion-ish on it. It's probably closer to 50 or 60 billion just on the military side of it, and that doesn't count the extra costs of inflation and oil costs and things like that. And now we're in a worse position than we started, and I don't get it. It's just so stupid. I don't understand.
Yeah, I put in the thumbnail tonight, it's Trump versus Obama or Obama versus Trump, whatever, because Obama at his presidential center yesterday I thought it was actually a great speech myself. But in an interview with, I believe it was NBC, and I have the clip here, he said just what you said. So maybe I'll play it and then get you a reaction to this.
I am very happy to see a ceasefire.
Oops. Let's get some audio on this. Here we go.
I am very happy to see a ceasefire, and I'm hopeful that it holds. But in terms of what was the original rationale for this war, which was there was a deal in place in which Iran had agreed not to develop nuclear weapons. This administration, or a prior version of this administration, pulled out of it, which caused then Iran to develop more nuclear capacity. We've now fought a war, spent billions and billions of dollars, put an enormous strain on our military. A lot of people have died. And it feels like we're back where we were before we started the war, except maybe a little bit worse off. I am very.
Yeah. And I don't know, man, there's so many sides of this. I don't know where to start, but I know one of the common MAGA, this happened during the 2024 election, and it's still going on today. They're like, but Obama gave them money too. The 2015 JCPOA, that was the treaty Obama negotiated. The payment to Iran was $1.7 billion. And I don't think anybody remembers what that actually was for. When the Shah was in power prior to 1979, Iran was one of the United States' closest allies in the region. They famously, until this spring, they famously flew F-14 Tomcats of Top Gun fame. They had all sorts of American gear. Otherwise, there were 4 guided missile destroyers that when they were designed in the 1970s were really high tech. And Iran spent all of this money on American weapon systems. But then when the Islamic Revolution took over in 1979, the United States halted delivery of them. Iran had already paid for them, but we halted delivery. So I think we took, the United States took into our inventory something like 30 to 40 F-14 Tomcats, those 4 guided missile destroyers that became the United States KIDD class, KIDD. Those in the late 1980s received a really super high-tech refresh called the New Threat Upgrade. But then the Cold War ended and we retired them. They were still very young vessels. They're now in the service of Taiwan. They're very capable ships, even today. But all of that money that Iran spent and never got those weapon systems, the United States says, okay, would you take $1.7 billion to cover, in recompense for what you already spent? So that was what that 1.7 was. And I don't know, there's a lot of people that don't quite, it's hard to grasp when you start getting into government spending, especially military spending. It's hard to wrap your brain around these figures, but each one of those destroyers would cost between $1 and $2 billion a piece. Each F-14 we're talking today's dollars. Each F-14 Tomcat in today's dollars was something like 150, 170 million. And if you can see that 4 destroyers at $1 to $2 billion a piece, you're talking 4 to 8 billion, and we only paid them back 1.7. So, and that was just talking about the destroyers. So we paid them a pittance of what they had already spent, and that was the amount that Obama gave back to Iran. Iran, before the Obama treaty, had more than 11 tons of highly enriched uranium. It was, I don't think they had reached 90% yet, but I might be wrong. But it was well over 60% enriched, which is 1 or 2 steps away from weapons grade material. It's 60% doesn't sound close, but in terms of the engineering that it takes to go the rest of the way, 60% is really close. Once you get to 90%, you're almost all the way there. Iran gave up their 11 tons of highly enriched uranium. They kept 300 kilograms of enriched uranium, but it was only enriched to like 3.6, 3.7%. And that's all they had. That's enough for civilian use. You can use it in medical. You can give it a little bit of a tweak and you can use it in a reactor. And that's all that is good for. There's no way you're going to make a weapon out of that. It's just the physics don't work. You can't argue with physics. So Obama accomplished a lot of these things, but Trump is like, if Obama did it, I hate it, and ripped up the treaty, and now here we are. I just don't get it.
So what you've obviously read the deal, the MOU, which is not really a peace deal. It's a deal to start talking about a deal.
It's basically we'll agree to stop shooting at each other and begin negotiations, and that was pretty much all it is.
Yeah, with the talk of a $300 billion payment that Trump says doesn't exist. It's not going to happen. No money's going to Iran. He's doing a bit of a song and dance, hearing different things about it. He's outright denying it on social media again tonight, but it's right in the text of the agreement, 300 billion. Now it's supposed to be what, an investment of some kind, but
it's
the
supposed to
government's clearly
be
involved.
private investment and local nations in the area. But one of the things that we're in a worse condition now than we were at the, before this started, I keep saying February. I think it started the 28th, if I remember right, of February, but correct me if I'm wrong on that date. But the Iranian regime in early February had its extremist elements aligned with the Revolutionary Guard and the Ayatollah. Their current civilian parliamentary government was right-wing, but far more centrist. And there was a significant moderate to pro-USA bloc in the Iranian parliament. That doesn't exist anymore. The radical Islamic Revolutionary Guard and the Ayatollah are even more radicalized than they used to be. And the civilian government is as hard right as it's going to go. It's the Iranian government has no moderates, no pro-USA part to it anymore. Trump succeeded in doing that same thing when he ripped up JCPOA, where when Obama negotiated that in 2015, a very moderate Iranian civilian government got elected after that. But when Trump ripped it up, all of a sudden the United States looks like it's not a reliable partner, because if you can't trust a negotiation from one president to the other, why would you bother negotiating in the first place? Because it's just going to change next election. So, and they've got a point, so I just keep shaking my head in disbelief because this stupid kind of burns at this point. I don't know what to make of any sense of this. By any metric, we were better off in early February, and by any metric, this deal is so far worse than the 2015 treaty that there's just no comparison. The Obama treaty is just so far superior to this.
And just give me your assessment of just the overall situation. Strait of Hormuz open before, then closed. Now it looks like Iran might still maintain some level of control over it.
Well, that's another aspect of how we're worse off. Before all of this started, the Strait of Hormuz was an international waterway. It was internationally recognized as a free passage strait that nobody owns it. Anybody's ships can sail through it. And now with this agreement, it looks like Iran, primarily with the consent of Oman, which is not a large country. Iran is not a small country. It's 90 million people. It's what is that? Almost three Texases, similar size to Tripoli in Canada, if I remember correctly. In terms of people,
a little over twice the size.
Yeah. So, but it's not a small country, is the point. And it's Oman in comparison would not be an equal partner. So it looks like we ceded the Strait of Hormuz to Iran. That's what the text looks like. I mean, we'll see how that plays out, but it makes no sense. American military members lost their lives. Many Iranians lost their lives. And from an American military veteran perspective, it's, if you're going to send me to war, you better make it worth it, because I'm putting my life on the line. I'm putting my life, my limb, and my sanity on the line for this. And if you're going to be stupid, the American veteran community is not going to be happy with you. And one of the air campaign was brilliant. Between the Navy and the Air Force, with some help from Army Aviation and Marine Corps Aviation, was brilliantly executed by any measure. But Hegseth, as a mid-grade, low-ranking officer during the global war on terror, learned all of the wrong lessons. He was steeped in the post-Vietnam rules of engagement are bad lore. Post 9/11, we need to, go hard and ugly against the terrorists was one strain of thought in the United States. It was wrong, but it was one strain of thought where you can rip up, basically give up the position of being the good guys in the pursuit of terrorists. And Hegseth internalized all of that, and he didn't like the rules of engagement even in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he decided that one of the things he didn't want was to commit ground troops, which was one of the biggest rules of engagement that has ever been. We're not going to use ground troops. We basically just told Iran that they had free use of the ground. And the only time a brilliant air campaign is going to be really successful is if you use it to set up a situation where your ground forces are going to be extremely successful. And what that means from American veterans' point of view, and I was Air Force, was my efforts accomplished nothing. At the end of the day, what did we actually do here? And yeah, that's not going over well in the American veteran community.
And what about the relationship with Iran? It seems like that's eroded as well. That doesn't look good.
That one's a little bit harder to make out. So Iran evidently hired psychologists. I don't know if you heard this story. They hired psychologists. They're like, Trump's obviously nutty. How do we talk to crazy? And you're talking about Islamic radicalists, Islamic fanatics that have been supporting international terror since 1979, so 47 years. And these are the people that are saying, how do I negotiate with crazy? And so they hired psychologists how to talk Trump. And I think they did the same thing. They did the same playbook that Vladimir Putin's doing. You slavishly praise him. They couch everything in terms that make Trump think that these things might have been his idea, or they're going to make him look great. And that's how they negotiated. So the Iranians were pretty darn smart here, because they knew who they were dealing with. And the art of the deal is not, that was a ghost written book, I'm just going to say. So the Iranians are far more fanatical and dug in than they were when this started. The opportunity to nab the Ayatollah that was taken on the initial day will almost certainly not exist in the future. It's hard to follow somebody if they're well enough protected. And it's hard to get at somebody if they're well enough protected. We can talk about that in terms of Ukraine later, but the Iranian government is dug in. They're more fanatical. They learned the lessons of distributed power and authority fairly well. So any one strike is not going to knock out a significant fraction of their command and control. Yeah, so I can't imagine. It's hard for me to think of any part of this where we're better off now than we were in February.
And in fact, Iran has declared total victory.
And they have a point, because I don't see what, aside from knocking off the old Ayatollah, I don't see. We knocked back some of their weapon systems to a significant degree, but that you can rebuild those. Or like I said, Iran is not a small country. They have some good engineers. They have a good industrial base. They have the support of China and Russia, and to a lesser extent, India and Pakistan. They're going to be able to rebuild fairly quickly. So the destruction of their weapon systems is a very temporary thing. Going back to air power creates a situation ground forces can be successful in. Us knocking back their weapons is a temporary thing.
Well, just
so
as we
good
kind of
news.
wrap up this segment.
Let's go to happy news.
Yeah. So just a final thought. Obama vindicated here. After all the rhetoric about that deal is terrible, the Obama deal is a path to a nuclear weapon, which many people bought.
Simply not true. Yeah, they bought it because they'll, like I said, people I don't think ever actually knew what was in JCPOA. There was this visceral hatred of Obama in the American right that inhibited them actually learning, them actually educating themselves on things like this. And it's one of those things that the Daily Show, I think Jordan Klepper is one of the comedians that does it most, where he'll go into MAGA land, into a rally or whatnot, and list a whole bunch of things without telling them, dates or who was responsible. There's like, do you agree with this? Do you agree with this? And he'll lay out all sorts of Obama accomplishments to somebody that's MAGA. They're like, that sounds fantastic. And then he says, yeah, Obama accomplished that. And they're like, no, he didn't. He's like, they did. I've got the receipts. I can show it to you. and so there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. And a lot of people believe things that are just completely not true.
Let's bring you in David Wiley. Hello.
Hey, David Wiley.
Hello.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us tonight. Looking forward to your input on this. I think you've been hearing a little bit of what we've been talking about with this Iran deal. What are your thoughts about this memorandum of understanding?
I think last time I was on your show a few months ago, I warned that there wasn't really going to be a good way out of this. And sure enough, there has not been. Though, to be honest, I really underestimated how bad it would get.
I shouldn't be laughing. It's not funny.
Well, you either laugh or you cry. So you have two choices.
Yeah. Iran really had Trump, pardon my pun, over a barrel. That barrel being the price of crude oil, right? So what most people don't realize is that we have been burning through our oil reserves, and they're at a level lower than they've ever been since we first had oil reserves. Even during the Iraq War, they never got as low as they are now. And the result of that is if Trump didn't get an end to Iran's embargo of the Gulf, prices were about to shoot up as reserves ran out. And with an upcoming election, that was really, really bad. So Iran had Trump in basically a perfect position. Trump can't stop Iran without a ground invasion, which he can't get the support of Congress of, which he can't get the support of the American public for. And so that's really off the limits. So there's really no good options for him here. And there continue to be really no good options. I'm not sure that this peace deal is going to last because it's contingent on Israel basically ending their war in Lebanon. And it doesn't seem that they have any interest in doing so.
Well, we are seeing I noticed in the last hour, just before beginning the broadcast, they apparently have reached some sort of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah.
Yeah.
So, but with the way things have gone, this war has ended. I think Trump has declared victory about, 40 times since it began now. So I'm not sure where we're at.
I'm really kind of waiting to see how long this current ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah lasts. The last few, I don't even think really lasted a minute before violating. So we're already at least past that. That's a good sign, but my expectations here are not very high. I also don't think that doesn't necessarily, this situation isn't over because Israel's occupying a significant portion of Lebanon at the moment. And that's a very unhappy status quo for both sides. So we'll see where it goes.
And did you see Obama's speech yesterday? And
I did not.
This.
I heard a little bit of it. Do you have a clip to play?
I can play the clip that that I have from NBC News where he specifically is asked about the peace deal or the MOU, right? I'll run that again. I ran it earlier, but you weren't here, so I'll run it just for you, David.
I am very happy to see a ceasefire, and I'm hopeful that it holds. But in terms of what was the original rationale for this war, which was there was a deal in place in which Iran had agreed not to develop nuclear weapons. This administration, or a prior version of this administration, pulled out of it, which caused then Iran to develop more nuclear capacity. We've now fought a war, spent billions and billions of dollars, put an enormous strain on our military. A lot of people have died, and it feels like we're back where we were before we started the war, except maybe a little bit worse off. I am very...
Thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, he's right here in this clip. Reading through the Memorandum of Understanding, I didn't find in any way that we were better off with this memorandum than when we had the Obama deal in place. And I've yet to hear really convincing arguments, and I hear from a lot of conservatives that they're kind of feeling the same way. They're really wondering, what exactly did we get here? So yeah, unfortunately, he's right on this one. And I heard a little bit of what Mike was saying earlier, and I want to contrast that. I am not Obama's biggest fan, as can probably be imagined. He left Ukraine, definitely a mess, and some other regions. But, facts are he's right here on Iran. So,
yeah. So out of the 14-point memorandum of understanding, is there anything positive about it? Either
peace.
of you? Both of you?
While it lasts.
Right. Mike, any positive? Anything?
David got back to the oil reserves and the strategic oil reserves getting low, but it was also refined products. So like jet fuel was getting low. That was going to start really heavily impacting stuff as early as late June, but definitely into mid-July. They were talking about canceling flights because it was getting so low. The only good side is that sort of economic disaster. Sorry, I'm sitting back up. That sort of economic disaster is maybe at least temporarily not in the cards. That's the only positive side I can see, but that can change with reserves low. Kind of like the munitions that we just shot off are going to take a while to replace. The reserves are going to take a while to replace. And one of the things about filling up the strategic reserve is you're purchasing it at current prices if you want to fill it up now. So if we're filling up the strategic reserve right now, we're buying it at the top of the market. So we're buying high. The whole buy low, sell high is not what we're doing here.
And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of confidence in this MOU. The price today is down a little bit, but it's still close to double the price that it was before this excursion / war into Iran began. Only down a few dollars per barrel here.
Yeah, there's no industry confidence that this is going to hold yet. If we make it through a couple of weeks of peace, then yeah, we can start seeing those prices really come down. If we get through a couple of weeks and people believe that this peace is going to hold.
The only thing that there's so many things about this I'm worried about, but one of the things that I'm worried about directly related to the supply of oil that might or might not be turned back on yet, because whether or not the straits are open yet is an open question, because they're still mined and they might not be open for another 2 weeks, kind of a thing, maybe longer, is all of the petroleum-based products, so fertilizer and all that kind of stuff. I think we missed the planting season in significant parts of the Northern Hemisphere already. You might be able to get a late crop in some of the really northern end of the growing areas, but food costs going into the winter, there's not going to be a downturn on cost of living or inflation, because the knock-on effects of this are just, they're going to have some legs. The half-life of this is it's going to be measured probably in years, months if we're lucky.
Well, any other thoughts before we move on to what's going on in Ukraine?
I can segue there pretty easily, actually. If this piece holds and the price comes down, it's going to be very good for Ukraine, particularly with current events.
Yeah.
The price of oil being down helps Ukraine and hurts Russia. Russia wants the price to go up so that more countries are interested in their black market oil. It's how they're funding the entire country. If the price of oil comes down, then Russia's economic worries and their current, Russia on fire disaster all gets worse for them. And we get closer to an actual peace solution between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah. And the attacks on Russia's oil refineries is still ongoing, escalating, I would say. And
Escalating.
very successful.
They've been escalating for at least the last 12 months. We've only right now we're just seeing it just broke the news. But it's been ongoing for a while. The oil refinery bingo card, I haven't seen an update since last October, and it was already an established thing last October.
Yeah, the drone warfare seems to be, well, where should I take this? Clip from Zelensky this past week saying that Ukraine will produce somewhere around 10 million drones in the coming year. Are we really looking like? To me, that's almost incomprehensible. I have images in my mind of like a sea of drones.
I have some numbers too. I don't know if this are going to help you because large numbers are hard to wrap your brain around. But their goal was 5 million for 26. I think that 10 million is probably for 27. And they're going to get help from Germany and the UK. That both of those nations agreed to build drones for Ukraine inside of those countries. So 5 million this year. In January, and so January is when I did this calculation, so we're talking 2025 numbers. We're not into this year yet. There was a combat drone mission begun once every 3 seconds. That's how many drones Ukraine was using in 2025. And they tried to double it for 26. I'm pretty sure they're going to hit it. And they're going to go up to 5 million this year, I'm pretty sure. So might be down to one combat drone mission starting around the 2 second mark. I don't know if that helps you wrap your brain around it or not, but the pictures of parts of the Ukrainian countryside that are just cobwebbed by fiber optic cables, the amount of drones going and flying is astonishing.
Now, I want to focus on a key part of that figure right there. Something Ukraine is doing that Russia isn't, is that a lot of those drones are defensive drones. They're drones that hunt drones, and other airborne munitions. Russia has not worked on that technology until now. They have been all completely offensively focused because Moscow and St. Petersburg were a long ways away from the front line. They felt that their logistics lines and everything were safe. And Ukraine extended the range of their offensive drones and now have a defensive drone shield. And so that is what's enabling what you're seeing in the news right now, with Moscow being on fire, with fuel trucks on fire all along the Sea of Azov. Russia has not had defense. And now I see that they're finally taking some of their FPV drones and trying to use them to start hunting down other drones. But they are a couple years behind in the game of where Ukraine is at, playing catch up. And Ukraine is still pushing the technological field. So what they have right now, they're going to have something even more amazing 6 months from now, because that's the pace of innovation. They have entirely new breakthroughs every 6 months. And really that right there is, if you've worked in industry, it's huge. It's amazing. It takes America years to put out new designs. Even for military equipment, it takes us years and years to, say, put out a new tank design. Ukraine comes up with an entirely new drone design, and the new drone does something completely different that the old one didn't within a few months. And that pace has been maintained throughout this war. And so I feel that as long as Ukraine keeps that up, victory for them is inevitable. And more countries, more leaders need to recognize that and get behind Ukraine and stop treating it as if all the partnership with Ukraine, all the investment is wasted. Because right now, that's a major reason why Trump lost this war with Iran. We could not defend anywhere from Iran's drones. And Iran's drones are not as advanced as Russia's are now. But we didn't have drone defense. Ukraine does. And if Trump had maintained a partnership with Ukraine, we would be able to lean on that technology and get their assistance. That's what Ukraine is going around the world and selling right now. They're talking to Germany, they're talking to the UK, they're talking to the Scandinavian countries and others saying, hey, we can give you a drone shield. We can protect you from Russia's drones or from whoever if you partner with us. And now they've become the broker of peace. They're even becoming the broker of peace in the Middle East. They've been cutting deals with Middle Eastern countries left and right, where, you know, we've shown that the U.S. can't really protect them. Iranian drones have hit all over, as far away as Cyprus, right? Flying over everyone's air defenses, flying over the U.S., Iraq, past Israel, past the UK, Turkey, doesn't matter. Nobody could stop them. But Ukraine can, and Ukraine will. And so they're going to be the world's guarantor of peace in this new age of drone warfare. And the U.S., frankly, needs to catch up.
Yeah. In many respects, is it fair to say that this is turning into Ukraine's success, but it's also illustrating Trump's failure in Ukraine, not just Iran? Because, he didn't end it in 24 hours. And now it's like the United States has lost status and leverage, influence because of all this.
If Trump had partnered with Ukraine from the beginning, we could have had that technology. We could have stopped Russia from helping Iran. And if he had started this conflict under those conditions, it's very likely the war would have been successful, right? He chose when and how to launch this war, and he simply wasn't prepared.
And yet, even today, he posts today that why he would even say this today. Russia would have won the war in 4 hours if a general hadn't taken tanks through a field.
Which is just so wrong on so many levels. It demonstrates he has no idea what happened.
It blew my mind when I read that. And is it fair to say, after what we saw at the G7, that Ukraine is gaining support from European countries and maybe even the United States because of the success they're having?
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Ukraine, starting in 24, when it looked like Trump was going to do well, if not win, the Ukrainians and the Europeans started this shift, how to Trump-proof support to Ukraine kind of a thing. So this shift has been ongoing. I don't think Ukraine ever lost support. I think it's actually been building it in different ways. So like I mentioned that the UK and Germany were going to build drones for Ukraine. But Germany, this was a report that kind of went under the radar for a little bit. But Ukraine recently tested a ballistic missile similar to the Russia's Kinzhal that is also suitable for a ballistic missile defense missile, because when you're shooting that long range and that high a speed, the physics of what you need are fairly similar. And so Germany just agreed to partner with Ukraine to develop that into a ballistic missile defense, a high end that thing that can shoot down Oreshniks and Kinzhals and all the rest.
Is that the Meteor that you?
No, the Meteor is something else.
Right.
Meteor is actually a British air-to-air missile launched from fighter jets. This is
right.
So the reason I sent you this is Sweden agreed to gift Ukraine 20 to 30, I don't remember what the exact number, old Saab Gripen fighter jets. These are the old CD variants that haven't been built for a decade or more. They're roughly equivalent to an F-16. They're better and worse than the F-16s in different ways. Mainly, it's like they were just the trade-offs in design are slightly different for this jet than the F-16. That's why I'd say it's both better than worse, and the same would be true with the F-16. So the Saab Gripen carrying a Meteor, the reason I sent that is one of the problems that Ukrainian soldiers have been having, one of the big problems that they didn't have a great counter to, was Russian air-launched glide bombs, because they're big. They can shoot them, they can drop them from a standoff distance. Ukraine, with the best AMRAAMs on their F-16s, could maybe sort of touch them, but not really, because we hadn't given them our best version of those missiles. But these Saab Gripens with the Meteor missiles can outrange almost all of Russia's glide bombs. So this, David was talking about like this defensive shield for drones. The Gripens with Meteor missiles would be a significant counter to the Russian glide bombs. Any Russian jet trying to launch a glide bomb would be in serious danger of being shot down.
And can I ask, how much of a factor is AI in this war now, especially with this being a drone war? I'm seeing reports saying that AI with Palantir has become a real factor. Is that true? How extensive is this?
I don't think that Palantir exactly is a major industry. I know that Palantir has been saying that, and that's kind of a sales pitch. They're present in Ukraine and they're trying to drum up sales, but Ukrainian homegrown AI is
That's
very
where
much
I
a
was going.
factor. They're developing it for their own drones. And Ukraine has acknowledged that they've had completely autonomous kill drones that are piloted solely by AI, hold territory and kill Russian soldiers. So the drone itself is making the decision when and what to shoot at, and doing so successfully.
So that's kind of sort of maybe on the completely autonomous. It depends on where you put the end of human input. But one of the things that this does is that it can prevent humans from ever being in danger, if that makes sense, where you can program it properly to recognize a certain list of threats, and it can go after those threats on its own, and you don't need to even bother with it. One of the advantages on the drone warfare, either offensive or defensive, is you can now fly again. This is instead of fiber optics making it unjammable. You can fly a drone on radio frequency without having to pay the weight penalty of the fiber optic spool. You can fly it on radio frequencies up to a point where Russian jamming would prevent you from flying it, and then the AI can take over. But you have already set a certain target area, and like I know there are trucks and or railroad things over there to hit, and you give them a list of like, if you see any of these, attack them, kind of a thing. But again, it's just one of those innovation cycles that David mentioned. That's 6 months. That this is just yet a new angle. This is something that's taking over from fiber optics, because there's always a penalty in fiber optics. It's the weight penalty.
So it seems to me maybe the use of the Palantir name is a propaganda tool, because I've noticed it on Russian media. I think it's you say Palantir and it triggers certain people within a certain political group too. Like BlackRock, you say that, some people lose their minds.
Marketing and or propaganda. Palantir itself. I mean, everyone, if you're making drones, you want to say that it's been tested in Ukraine. And that goes for those who are manufacturing for both sides.
When you've got a system proven in combat, and this is not mild combat. This is a high intensity combat situation, even still. So yeah, that's a big stamp of approval, like David was saying.
It's, this is the gold standard for the entire military industry. Every nation's military industry is, your product survived the Ukraine battleground. So everyone's going to claim that, and I'll tell you right up that most of the drone companies and other weapons companies around the world that are saying it are lying. They sent a few demo units and Ukraine said no thanks, but they're marketing that as, oh, our product worked in Ukraine because we sent them 10 of them and Ukraine said they didn't want any more, right? That's what a lot of what is going on. So check your sources carefully. It's not that they're outright lying to you, but they're deceiving you.
Speaking of propaganda, I really need your help understanding something. Laura Loomer.
Sorry.
She apparently has done like a 180 on Ukraine.
Yeah, I saw that.
Noticed that.
Recently.
So I don't know what to make of that. Help me out here. What's going on? Or do you even know?
Yeah, there are several things going on. And for those who haven't paying attention, Laura Loomer has a long-running feud with Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of the other MAGA women who have been, at least up until recently, very firmly on the Russian side. And so Laura Loomer has been kind of taking the other position a little bit incrementally. And now she's outright saying, oh, that Russia had me fooled. And I think there's a couple of reasons to this. One, she's kind of, a big part of it is she's going against her rivals within the movement politically.
So also, it's good for Laura Loomer. That's what I wanted to interject.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is I think that Laura Loomer, as well as many in the Trump administration, are realizing that Ukraine is the eventual winner here, and they want to back the winning side, right? So they're getting ready to prepare their audience to slowly make the shift. It's not going to come out tomorrow, but by the time that Ukraine's victory is inevitable and secured, they'll be able to pivot and say, "Oh, we were here, a long, long time ago. We were always really on Ukraine's side."
The benefit for this, as much as I have almost no positive feelings for Laura Loomer. That's probably the most benign way I can put that. However, she in the past has demonstrated that she has Trump's ear. So her coming out pro-Ukraine could be a really good thing for Ukraine if she can get into Trump's ear again.
I don't even think it's necessarily in Trump's ear. This is kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Trump himself has already been significantly changing his position on Ukraine. I won't say that he's outright pro-Ukraine right now, but I think if you're paying attention, it's very obvious that he's not as harshly anti-Ukraine as he was. His critiques of Zelensky have become very few and very mild compared to what they once were, compared to, you don't have the cards and where's your suit, right? If everyone remembers that meeting in the Oval Office, that's gone. Now he's talking about, inviting Zelensky directly. They're having little talks, and he's actually, for the first time, openly criticizing Russia and Putin more directly. Still very mild, but it's criticism. And he's going to slowly shift. He's not going to flip from one side to the other, but he's going to see which side's the winner. He wants to back a winner. And now it's looking like Ukraine is the winner and Putin's not.
Yeah, and because of Ukraine making these gains, we're seeing, at least I'm seeing, increasing, what's the right word? There appears to be intensified discussions within Russia, and including advisors to Putin, who are advising or recommending the use of a nuclear strike against a smaller European target in order to restore nuclear deterrence. The most vocal person on that front is Sergei Karaganov, who just in the past week appeared in a lengthy video with Professor John Mearsheimer talking about exactly that. Then at the St. Petersburg Economic Summit, Dugin was there speaking about this subject as well. Not as forceful, but that seems to be something that's on the table and open to discussion. Is this just rhetoric that's being put out into the public court of discussion to just scare people, to try to erode? Like, what is is this it seems more serious is what I'm getting at this point, because they're losing.
Russia, well, and Russia's had a history of when things go wrong on the battlefield, they start rattling the nuke saber as kind of like, you can't send M1 Abrams tanks or we're going to use a nuke, or you can't send F-16s or we're going to use a nuke, or all of these things that we've done in the past. And to a certain extent that worked on Biden. There was a lot of Biden slow rolling for that reason, I think, anyway. I don't know that this new one, I don't know how serious it is currently, but the further into a corner Russia gets backed, the chances of a nuke popping off get higher, in my opinion. And while I have confidence in the United States command and control of our nuclear arsenal, I don't have that same confidence in Russia's command and control. So
they're saying that they think a nuclear conflict they can win.
That's been true. That's been true of the Russians going all the way back to the start of the Cold War. The Russian and Soviet doctrine always included the concept that a nuclear war was winnable.
This is insane. I think they're crazy.
I also don't think it's realistic. I think, well, the number one reason you're seeing it right now is because Moscow and St. Petersburg are being hit. And the Russian people are terrified. You can see videos of them saying they want to get away from Russia. And so this is, first of all, reassurance to the Russian public that we're still strong. You don't have to be afraid. We're not all in this. We still have nukes. But they're not going to use them. And there's several reasons why. One, they have failed all their repeated nuke tests internally. They've announced, oh, we're going to test a nuke, or they've even done them unannounced. They've all failed.
Well, the Oreshniks are as scary as they try and make the Oreshnik, which is a nuclear missile. It's not accurate.
Yeah.
Not even for horseshoes and hand grenades and nuclear weapons. It's not even accurate enough for a nuke.
The strategic nukes, Russia doesn't really know if they work. They're old Soviet nukes, and there's a very good chance that none of them work at this point. What Russia has that works in abundance is tactical nukes. But no matter what size nuke you use, the international response is going to be the same. You don't want to use a single small tactical nuke because everyone's going to turn against them. Even China will turn against them under those circumstances. And once you've used a nuke, there's no reason for any nation in the world to hold back. Or what? You'll use a nuke? You've got nothing further to escalate to. Russia needs to keep that in their back pocket as a deterrent. That's to really keep Moscow and St. Petersburg safe. And that's why they're bringing this out right now. They want the people of those cities who, and keep this in mind, the Russian rulers, they really need the support of those two cities. That's where power and control of Russia is in those cities.
That's part of where I was going to go, talking about the Ukraine situation and the burning of those two cities tonight.
And inside Russia, there are starting to be not so subtle hints to Putin that the oligarchs and the powers are running out of patience with him. Even the FSB, which we can just call by its old initials, the KGB, have started releasing Putin critics from prison, right? So that people are now going around in Russian media and in public criticizing Putin. There's no longer the penalty that it once was, and that's their way of saying that they're losing patience with him. Now, they'll let those people out on the street to say what they're not willing to say themselves.
The standard mill bloggers, some of them closely related to the military, are starting to have some open criticism that they didn't have 3 to 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So the trend of unrest inside of Russia seems to be real and deep and widespread. To the point of there's even this used to be in complete fantasy unicorn, rainbows and sprinkles land of Russia falling, but now there's rumors of like Kazakhstan wants to be free of Russia. Maybe Siberia wants to be an independent state. Just these kinds of things that used to be in complete la land have gained about that much credibility at this point. They're still in la land, but it's not completely crazy anymore.
And strong.
We're seeing
word.
more
Sorry,
oligarchs and generals fall to their deaths outside of first floor windows for their criticism, but that's
You'd
not
think they'd
stopping.
start living on the ground floor, but that's just me.
They still fall to their deaths outside the first floor window. It doesn't matter.
So strong words from Zelensky to Belarus, telling them to take their equipment to
Russia too.
Yeah. What do you make of that?
There was a thing about Belarus, but also Russia, that as long as Ukrainian cities are burning, then St. Pete and Moscow are going to burn. I think that was a day or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the Belarus thing, Russia's been trying to get Belarus. One of the rumors was that they might even annex Belarus. I still don't know how likely that is, because the history of Belarus has been, as recently as 2016, Belarus was making smoke signals about maybe we should break off from Russia. Of course, that was 10 years ago at this point. But the idea of Belarus coming in on the side of Russia is a little bit worrying to Ukraine. Ukraine's already always had a couple 100,000 troops in the north on the Belarusian border, because that's one of the directions Russia initially attacked from. That's the direction the attack on Bucha that resulted in those war crimes came from. The idiots that decided they would encamp in the Chernobyl exclusion zone came out of Belarus. So yeah, it's a worrisome thing for Ukraine, and that it's breaking the news shows how much rumbles were actually maybe credible that Belarus might have actually started to enter in.
So what this is it's largely a distraction. It's not a distraction for Americans. Putin's intending it as a distraction for Ukraine. All across the southern front, Putin is losing, and he's losing badly. Crimea is being hammered.
With the exception of Konstantinivka, but that's it.
Yep. And Putin needs a win somewhere. And so he's trying to push Belarus. But the problem is that Belarus militarily is hollowed out. They've already given up all of their Soviet arsenal to Russia.
Yeah,
they've given up their ammo to Russia. They've got troops and not much for them to shoot. And those troops don't have the experience or even the equipment that Russia does. So really, they could start a fight, but the Ukrainian counterattack would be a weekend adventure for them. It really would not last long. It would be one-sided, and they know it. That's why they quickly turned around and said, we're not a real threat. But Zelensky, he properly called them out. Like, your systems are passively helping the Russians target us. So he threatened them, and now they're in kind of a bind because he can make good on that threat.
Yeah, gave them a week to take that equipment and pull it back, right?
And David's right. Ukraine is fully capable of taking them out very quickly.
How realistic are these predictions that Ukraine will take back Crimea?
That was La La Land 6 months ago, and it's in plausible territory now.
And what's turned the tide there? Is it the attacks on the roads and bridges leading into Crimea?
Yeah, I sent you a map of the drone range. David was talking a little bit about this earlier. And some pictures of a very recent, sometime in the last 48 hours, railroad bridge strike. I only saw it today, so it might have inside of the last 12 hours. I don't know. But
Okay.
it shows the range of so there's the battlefield drone, both offensive and defensive, that's going to cover the front lines and a little bit behind the Russian lines. But what is really hurting Crimea is the mid-strike drones. And one thing Ukraine has been hitting Russia with inside of Russia, this would be going after things 1,000 kilometers inside of Russia, were the old FP1 drones. But one thing they did to create the FP2 drone is they gutted the parts of the FP1 that gave it the extended range and used that now newly available weight for a big warhead, 200, 300 kilograms, a big warhead. But it can only, instead of 1,000 to 1,400 kilometers, it's now down to 200 kilometers. But that can really do some damage. That's a big warhead. It can go after bridges. It can go after railroad cars, big depots. It's a damaging warhead. I don't know if you found that. I can maybe look for.
Yeah, I think I have it. Is this what you want?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can see the overlapping arcs. The big thing about Crimea is there's really only 3 ways in, and you can see the white lines there, where there's 2 in the north and 1 in the east on Crimea.
4 ways. I see that there's the rail line is missing from this map, the northern rail line.
Sure, but it's in a similar direction.
Yep.
And then they sank all the big ferries. Russia hasn't had a rail car ferry in a while. There's one small ferry that's still operating, but its days are numbered.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Oh, did they get it?
Yes.
Okay, that's newer than I thought. That's fun. But the other thing is the coastline. The only places those ferries were working at all were in the Kerch Strait Bridge. One of my special forces contacts, he's been operating off of the coast of Crimea for a solid year now. So there's in some sense, Ukraine owns the waters, at least on the western side of Crimea, where he'll land, cause some chaos, go back to his boat and go away. Or they'll launch some small drones off of their boat without landing. So yeah, Crimea is a mess. It's out of gas. I don't know what their supply of water is. So one of these bridges, I think it's the furthest west one, was actually not over a river. It was over a freshwater canal that used to go from the lake that Russia blew up the dam. Years ago at this point. And it used to feed fresh water to Crimea from that lake. It's now dry. So how difficult it is to cross that dry canal it's a lot easier than it used to be. But even still, the roads leading to it, Ukraine's been interdicting with different types of drones. Late May, I think they were killing 280, 290 trucks a day. And that was already 3 weeks ago. They might, their goal was 500 trucks a day. I don't know how close to it they are. But yeah, if you can't get food, water, and ammunition to your soldiers, much less spare parts or replacement troops, there might be a point where Crimea just becomes untenable. And I think we might already be there. The soldiers can't get spare parts. The air defenses are getting hit. The naval forces still in Sevastopol Bay haven't sailed in months. It's looking increasingly good gravy. I can't talk. Increasingly like Russian forces inside of Crimea can no longer hold. It's an untenable position. At what point that spills into them having to walk away, I don't know. But that day is not too far in the future, assuming Ukraine can keep this up and Russia doesn't find a counter. This is one of those, like, let's talk about the happy news, the Ukraine war.
Yeah. It's a very good point. If you want to put that map back on, though, I'll point out, so Crimea is down there at the bottom. You can see that there's these dark red waves that are where Ukraine has drone control of the air.
Mhm.
And a lot of those are also options for a Ukrainian counteroffensive. So it's they could go towards the Tokmak Mariupol direction on the south. It's been very much softened up by the mid-range drones. They could go to the southern Kherson direction. Just they can cross over there as easily as they can cross to Crimea. Russia has to defend all of them, but they no longer have the logistics train to move defenses around, and they have insufficient defenses.
And I was going to
have to pick and choose.
And I was going to mention that this when you're looking at this map and you see the three ways into Crimea, if you back that up, and anything on the western side of Russian occupied territory has the same road supplying it, and it's coming out of Rostov in Russian territory, which means that the same supply problems, maybe not as bad, but still very bad, with we don't have enough water or food, much less ammunition or replacement troops, is true for a lot of the western half of that. So the southern half of Kherson, so south of the Dnieper River, and getting into the Zaporizhia district and even into western Donetsk, is in a very similar supply situation where Ukraine, the same effort that is cutting off Crimea is also cutting off those portions of Russian occupied territory.
Are there reports of troops in some locations even pulling back? Is there any truth to that?
The only thing that I've seen confirmed is, and it would be on the very, very western tippy tip of the Kherson region, and it's a spit of land that, so if you, on the west, the mid western part of this map, you see Mykolaiv and Kherson. There's a little spit of land that sticks out into it, and Mykolaiv is the major port for Ukraine. And that spit of land was where the Russian troops have been confirmed that they walked away. They're like, we don't have enough water to drink, we don't have enough food to eat, we aren't getting enough ammunition to counter Ukrainian drones. We simply can't stay here. Otherwise, we're going to die. And it would be the same effect of them walking away or staying. Either effect would be there are no more Russian troops there because they either walked away or they're dead.
What is it that at what point would Putin just give up and pull back? Because if you want to avoid a nuclear it seems to me that would be a more reasonable position to take or strategy to employ. Let's just end this thing and pull the troops back instead of trying to nuke a small site in Europe to restore nuclear deterrence.
I don't know where they'd nuke.
That's a very Western mindset there. That's not how a KGB trained officer thinks. They're not thinking about business. They're not thinking about building anything or saving the lives of Russian troops. He's thinking about what he can gain and how he can show all the other powerful men of Russia that he's strong. And unfortunately for him, he doesn't really have any good options here. It's really getting down to just a matter of time before some other strong man in Russia deposes him. If you're Putin, you're becoming increasingly paranoid, not of the West,
but of your own people.
Yep, of every general and oligarch who can tell the Russians that he can do a better job and has the power to knock you out.
Yeah, unless I don't know if it would have any difference. Kind of like I said, there would be no difference between those Russian troops staying there and dying or walking away. Either way, there's no more Russian troops inside that part of the land. I don't know if there's a difference between Putin deciding to withdraw and then he would look weak, or deciding to stay and then losing and then looking weak. Either one, I think, has the same effect, that somebody else in Russia is going to overthrow him.
But these strikes during the St. Petersburg Economic Summit
were brilliant by Ukraine. I'm just going to put that out there.
It must have had a pretty severe psychological impact on the general population and on Russia's oligarchs.
Well, one thing David was saying earlier is that these two cities are incredibly important to, well, pretty much anyone that has any pretense of running Russia, and they are crucial to Putin's power base. St. Petersburg is Putin's hometown, for instance. But these two cities have been largely protected, not just from Ukrainian strikes, but from the ravages that the Russian war effort has inflicted on the rest of Russia. So these two cities have been largely protected from conscription and recruitment and various shortages that might be affecting. They have good roads, whereas other parts of Russia, they might have had a road 30 years ago was the last time they saw road work. And so these two cities getting hit, really, the brilliance of the Ukrainian move here was astonishing, at least in my opinion.
David, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, all of that's correct. I'd also say that this forum was very important to the oligarchs for foreign investment and foreign business deals. Right? It used to be that this was where they brought in all the foreign money that wanted to make deals. And first of all, most of them just didn't show up. But second, those who did saw that this is not a good investment.
Opening and closing fireworks were provided by Ukraine.
Yeah. So why would you invest into Russia if there's that likelihood that it's just going to get blown up, right? They couldn't even protect their own navy in St. Petersburg, the Baltic Navy, right? Far away from Ukraine. So yeah, if you're a Russian oligarch who lives and dies by how much wealth you have, this is very bad. And I'd also say, Russia's been hitting Kyiv, and now they've shown that they can hit Moscow back. There's black rain in Moscow, and the city is on fire. They are no longer immune. It happens right there in the capital of Russia. So every Russian knows that they are not safe from this point on in the war.
So, Rick, I sent you a map of Moscow. Moscow air defenses was the email subject line.
Okay.
This goes to David's point on how impactful this is and getting past Russian air defenses. Because one of the effects of Crimea is Ukraine has been going after air defenses there, which have been denuding the rest of Russia because Russia still had to defend Crimea, which means the more air defenses Ukraine was chewing up in Crimea, the less Russia had available elsewhere. But now Moscow is getting hit, and they're shooting off, similar to Iran and the United States. Russia is shooting off 500,000 to $1 million interceptor missiles against a $10,000 to $20,000 Ukrainian drone. So you can see all of those little bubbles of different colors. If you could see it better, you could see some of them were Pantsers, some of them were S-300s, S-400s, but all of those are different types of air defenses inside of Moscow. And if you look at that black thing, that's where one of the big refineries was hit, almost city center. There's another one that's southeast that's not on this map. There's a blue one that's like southeast of city center, and there was a refinery. Go down. That blue dot. There's a refinery that's northeast of that's not on this map, but it's also been hit several times. But you can see that the air defenses around Moscow that Ukraine is getting through to just cause the refinery that they hit, this big one right there, the black mark right there, supplied. What do you remember the percentage of the fuel for Moscow, David?
About 40%.
It was a big number.
And I think that's not just the city. That's actually the entire oblast. It's the entire region.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me because it was a big facility. And it's just shut down at this point. I mean, last I checked, it was still on fire.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they refer to these shutdowns as unscheduled maintenance when they talk about it in the Russian media, because I think there's still some restrictions on what they're allowed to report.
Well, one of the mill bloggers that I was watching today this is a Russian mill blogger, was complaining that the state-run television would not run any pictures of the outside of Moscow, what it looks like in the city. They were not talking about the attacks. The only mention was condemning anybody that was taking video and posting it. That was the only mention. And the mill blogger was like, you can't even talk about what's going on inside of Moscow right now. So yeah, the unrest. When I mentioned that these cities had been largely untouched by the internal Russian economic strain, now that they're being hit, a lot of people are doing a lot of WTF.
Yeah,
I was seeing videos today of lines for fuel stations that are literally miles long.
Yeah.
And these are in Moscow. These are in the capital, a long, long ways from Ukraine. Down on the southern front, today they started military convoys for the fuel trucks to try and hope that some of them get through. In Crimea, the military bloggers are complaining that they can't even get air defenses in position to defend anything because they don't have fuel to move them. So they can't even protect the targets because they can't get the air defenses there, the ones that are, still working and not shot up yet. So the situation just gets bleaker and bleaker for Russia. And Ukraine doesn't even need to launch a counteroffensive right now, because every day that this continues, the attrition just gets worse for the Russian military. And eventually, when they're completely softened up, they'll roll through them. So you won't see, the borders will continue moving slowly and slowly until Ukraine decides the conditions are right. And then it'll be a lightning fast counteroffensive like it was in 2022.
And going back to the basic supplies of water and food, it's something to roll around inside of your own head of, when you're basically rested and well fed and you've had enough water, you have a certain level of, reserves. You feel very relatively strong. I can, after this, I'm going to go for a 3-mile run. I'm feeling pretty good. How many days of not enough water and food would it take for you to become combat ineffective? And that, by which I mean you can't move around. You can't think straight because you're so thirsty. You don't have ammunition to shoot. Or if you do, it's just a couple of rounds, which isn't useful. At some point, going after these supplies will make very large sections of the Russian army combat ineffective. They're not able to fight. They're barely able to function as human beings at this point.
And one of the reasons for the convoys now going, with the military convoys going with these fuel trucks, is not just to protect from drones. They're also sending them with soldiers in order to prevent looters.
Mad Max.
Yep. Because everyday Russians, they're so desperate for fuel to do anything, that they're looting and siphoning off these trucks when they can.
The black market for fuel in Crimea is something.
Yep.
I was reading reports that it would be as high as $60 per gallon, but that seemed not as credible to me. But I'm not in a situation where I haven't had fuel for 2 or 3 weeks.
And these are more troops pulled off the front line, more weapons pulled off the front line. And it's a negative cycle that's going to keep getting worse and worse. And these large convoys, they actually get easier for Ukraine to spot.
There was one case where Russia ran one of these convoys and Ukraine killed the bridge in front of the convoy. Then the convoy had nowhere to go. So it was just sitting there and Ukraine just picked off the convoy. Something like 100 fuel trucks that got nailed just because Ukraine took out the bridge in front of it.
So what is this that we're looking at here, Mike?
Is this a video?
Yes.
Go ahead and play it. I don't remember which.
О, che ti appena vita.
I believe this is the one where a Ukrainian drone evades several SAM missiles and hits anyway. There was one SAM that missed.
Let me just. I lost you guys. Hang on a sec.
Here.
Oops, you're back on now. I accidentally took you off screen.
So you can see that vapor trail that kind of corkscrewed. There were two of those, although the second one was harder to see. This was a video of Russian air defenses are there and active, and they're not hitting the drone. So this is one drone that got through, and in this short video, you saw two Russian SAMs miss it. There's the second.
And this is Ukraine doing something new, because normally these drones are very easy to hit.
And it'll hit eventually here. There it goes. So that's what life is like in Moscow. This is that same. Well, actually, this might not be that same oil refinery. There is a different video that I sent of a Ukrainian drone actually getting shot down. Just they don't all get through. But you can see there, they shot it down a little late, and the drone warhead still went off. I don't know where that was in relation to the refinery. So even though they shot it down, it still caused damage.
Yep, and significant damage to the capital city. So.
Yeah, and then we saw that that holding tank with the lid blown right off it.
From a Russian SAM. I think I sent that one to you yesterday.
Yeah.
But that was definitely a Russian SAM, and it's been a while since I've seen a video of a Russian anti-aircraft system shooting itself, where they'll shoot and the missile will circle right back around and hit the launcher. But this is an example of the missile. I don't know what it was tracking, but it never got a high altitude and it went right for that tank. And Russia blew its own lid.
I see all these missiles. They're failing to lock on to the drones as targets.
Well, in that first video too, the two of those missiles obviously didn't have a lock. The first one vaguely, maybe, sort of, kind of, maybe got close, but not really. And then the second one wasn't even in the vicinity.
Normally, a missile is following a radar signature or a laser or some kind of thermal signature. Yep. Yeah.
But
to identify a target and follow it, no matter how much it moves. And drones, they don't really do evasion, and they're not that fast. So it's usually a pretty easy target for a missile, which is still, a win for the drone maker, because you send a missile that takes a year to make and millions of dollars, and shoot down a $10,000 drone with it that only took you a few months to build. But now those drones are getting through.
So yeah, Ukraine is launching between 200 and 300 drones per night, but even if only 20 of them get through, that's some significant. Oh yeah, that was the Russian SAM that hit the thing. Yeah. And that's hard to argue. So not only did the expensive SAM go up, but how many hundreds or even thousands of gallons of, probably a lot, multiple thousands of gallons of oil just are not in existence anymore.
Well, and it's landing back on Moscow as black rain. That's going to further sicken the city, and it's going to kill, plants, animals, and even people. Just from the toxification of the environment.
Wow.
The child in me that liked fireworks really enjoys that video.
Unbelievable. Where do we go from here? What else did you want to highlight tonight? Mike, you sent me material.
drone range. Pull up the Russian railroads just for people to get a sense. It's email 6. This is sometime probably in the last 24 hours.
Okay, I've got it.
It's a screenshot from the video feed from the drone. So this one, I don't know if somebody was in control of it or they just had the live video feed. But this is not one of the railroad bridges that's crossing into Crimea. This is one of the railroad bridges inside of Crimea. So not only are they cutting off the entrances into Crimea, they're making railroads inside of the peninsula unpassable. That railroad is going to need some serious work.
And if, like the other bridges, Russia will do all the work, they'll be ready to open it, and then Ukraine will hit it again.
Yeah, they'll hit it again. Yes, because you hit it, you destroy it, you wait for them to expend all the money, time, energy, and supplies rebuilding it, and then you hit it again. So you zeroed out their balance sheet.
Multiple times, Russia's already repaired these bridges with expedited repairs at high expense. And then the day it's ready to open up, Ukraine has hit it again. So logistics, really, they're totally shot. And it's a long ways to get to Crimea. Mm-hmm. And most of the trucks, they're no longer making it. So for everything that he does send, it's a huge expense. And that could have been in Moscow, giving them a chance to defend their city, or St. Petersburg. And if you're a Russian oligarch, or you have, your family trying to keep them safe somewhere in Russia, there's no good options anymore, right? So pretty soon, there's going to be no more choices for Putin, and there's a lot of choices for Ukraine.
Yes.
What they can seize when they attack. Russia has dilemma, and Ukraine has options.
So there's two things that I see Ukraine starting to do already, and one of them is in conjunction with a Russian partisan group, BOAK, which over the last 4 years has been sabotaging Russian railroad inside of Russia. It hasn't gotten a lot of press, but they've been more active recently, and in at least one instance that I'm aware of, they're paired with Ukrainian special forces operating inside of Russia. But the email that I sent with, it's called Next Target. So we've talked about that southern supply route, and David's been talking about this ever expanding drone envelope. There is a next target. So I mentioned that whole western half was being cut off. The M4 highway that leads from Moscow down to Rostov is almost certainly their next target. They've been hitting it lightly already. But if the M4 highway, they don't need to go all the way to Rostov. They can go on that highway and then go into Donetsk. It's one of the reasons why they're still Russia is still relatively capable of conducting offensive operations in the eastern part. They're not gaining a lot of ground, but they're still at least capable of operating.
Okay, I think this is the one you want here. On the green, this one?
Yeah, so that blue highway is Moscow to Rostov. Yep. And if you go in there, you can see Luhansk, go down a little bit. You should be able to see, well, there's Donetsk over there. Go up and to the left. Horlivka. So you can see where all of the roads here are heading into the Donetsk and Luhansk area. And there's Kramatorsk, and you can get some of the fortress built over there. But this is almost certainly Ukraine's next target to cut off the rest of Russia's occupation force. Russia has between 700,000 and 900,000 soldiers inside Ukraine right now. That's a lot. of daily supplies that they need to get to their own soldiers to continue operating as a military force.
So how much time does, well, I'd say time is running out for Putin because of the political pressure at home and just the logistics.
David, punt.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. It's not going to happen tomorrow. I wish it would, but not likely to happen tomorrow. I don't see anything really happening yet, but who knows? I'm not a Russian insider, certainly not inside the FSB and the military, where this eventual decision to remove Putin is going to be made. So I don't know what their final line is, but I know that they're looking at it at this point. And so really, I think that barring a surprise, I expect this to continue on into early next year. I really don't see it going past it at this point. Just Russia's coming to military exhaustion. It's not even about running out of manpower. It's about running out of fuel and machinery and not being able to get it to the war.
Yeah, even given the extreme losses in manpower Russia has already suffered, Ukraine's effort against supplies has made so even losing 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 million Russian soldiers so far, they still have close to 1 million soldiers inside of Ukraine, but they have to keep them supplied. And so this campaign of just hitting and hitting and hitting, and not in small ways, hundreds and hundreds of supply trucks every day, is going to take a toll. And I think David's right that it's not going to happen right away, but it's one of those things that Ukraine's going to keep chipping, but there's going to be a breaking point where before that we might not see it, but at some point something's going to break, and those Russian soldiers aren't going to be able to fight anymore. And once we reach that point, it could start happening very fast.
I guess that's why we're seeing the amplification of the propaganda machine. Even at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, we saw pro-Russian American influencers over there, which got my attention, Candace Owens being one of them. What do you make of that?
Desperation. He's really kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here with Candace Owens and the Tate brothers. These are not top-of-the-line MAGA influencers or anything else. These are not people who can really help Putin dig his way out and win the American public. This is desperation.
Yeah, and that's been part of the playbook from the beginning, is to undermine support so that the money and the military support is cut off. That's, I think, what the objective was with the Trump administration, trying to exert influence through social media on Trump's base.
Absolutely.
Right?
And 4 years ago, a lot of people were listening to Tucker Carlson spew Russian propaganda. I don't know how many people he reached, but now it's not nearly so many. And he's not really as focused on the Russian propaganda. They're not paying him so much anymore. He's now like headquartered in Qatar. Right. And so they've had to move on to last rate people like Candace Owens.
Is Tucker Carlson in Qatar now?
Last I heard he was in Qatar.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought he was still holed up on his farm in Maine.
Tucker Carlson, for those who don't know, his dad was Dick Carlson, was a registered lobbyist for Viktor Orban. So that was where the money stream came from for all this propaganda. And that's done now. I believe his dad passed away, and Viktor Orban is no longer in power in Hungary. So time for a new state sponsorship chain. And that's really, the ousting of Viktor Orban has really crippled the propaganda networks here in the US, because that was where the money flowed through. And now that's gone. So they need new sponsors. Some people, like the Tate brothers and Candace Owens, are going direct to Russia and getting that Russia Today sponsorship. Russia Today being directly under the control of the FSB. And so, but again, that's just desperation. They do not have the same audiences that the old influencers had, and the old influencers don't even have the same audiences that they used to. And now you've got people like Laura Loomer within MAGA who are directly oppositional to Putin. So things are worse and worse for Putin. He's going to continue getting more desperate, scraping the bottom of the barrel to get some influence, because that's really been where Russia's greatest successes have been in propaganda and turning off Ukrainian weapons from the countries that have been supplying them by getting them to deny support. While they increase their support from countries like North Korea, China, and Iran. Right now, the entire Russian war is being subsidized by China, and without it, they would be forced to fold tomorrow. But Russia's sending out a lot of promises to China, and China's watching just how long they can actually, keep up their end. It's not, they say a no limits friendship, but I think Putin and Xi are precisely aware of the limits and exactly where the line is drawn and when it's going to stop being beneficial for them.
Okay, well, let's take a brief break. We'll come back and continue, and as we get into the final leg of tonight's discussion. We'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're back, and Mike's still not back in his seat. But let me ask you this, David. Zelensky has made mention of a shortage of Patriot missiles and has been asking for more assistance because their air defenses seem to be diminished. How serious is that situation?
That's a very good question. I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. So the Patriot missile is one of the only defenses against Russian ballistic missiles, particularly the hypersonic missiles. So it's not about the drones that Russia has a lot of. It's about these ballistic missiles. The ballistic missiles themselves are very expensive and difficult to produce, but they exact a very human toll on Ukraine. Like recently, Russia attacked, not for the first time, a very old monastery in Kyiv. Stalin also attacked it, I think, during World War II. I can't remember exactly. Destroyed it during World War II. But it's very much a symbol of Kyiv. It's older than the city of Moscow itself, right? To put it in perspective. And that's the real damage. It's measured in Ukrainian lives. It's measured in destruction of Ukrainian culture. It is not a threat to Ukraine's war effort. It's really showing the impotence of his ability to continue waging this war, because he can't make significant strikes on Ukrainian military targets. But for Ukraine, of course, it's very important to protect their people. And our failure to deliver missiles has a direct cost in the number of lives of civilians. And yeah, that's what it is. Now, there are legitimate reasons for the U.S. to hold back. Again, we do not have drone defense. So in the war with Iran, we have been relying on these multi-million-dollar Patriot missiles to shoot down drones that Iran manufactures for 100,000 or so. Now, doing this on its own is, in the long run, losing a war of attrition. That's part of why Trump lost the war in Iran. The solution, if he can stomach it, is a partnership. We need to have an exchange. We need to exchange Patriot missiles and their production for Ukrainian drone defense. And the sooner Trump can get over his dislike of Zelensky, the better it will be for all of us, including Trump himself.
Yeah, I'm going to take you off and put you back on the screen. There you go. For some reason, you were sort of darkened there, your image.
Yep.
Any thoughts on that? Why do they keep hitting these cultural landmarks? Mike?
Because they can.
David?
Yeah,
They're stationary targets that don't move. They know how to find them, unlike the Ukrainian military, and they know where they are.
I think it's a combination of that and Russia's weapons have proven to not be, at least these longer range weapons have proven to not be overly accurate. And so when you've got a larger target, that's, if you have a weapon that has a precision of like a meter or less, like some of the American precision weapons, you can go after. Our motto in the War on Terror was warheads on foreheads, which is a little bit of exaggeration where you can aim there. But, you can put a warhead through a kitchen window wherever you want. But the Russian weapons, they might have an accuracy of 100 meters, maybe 200 meters, where 90% of their weapons, but they're going to land inside of a 200-meter circle. It's just not that accurate. So what you can hit with that, the number of things that you can successfully hit with that go way down. I think they're also operating on this mistaken assumption that they can intimidate the Ukrainians. I don't know why this makes sense because it hasn't worked in over 4 years. In some ways, it makes Ukraine stronger because it just pisses them off. So if you've got anger, can be a very powerful source of energy. And if you can use that to motivate you to fight back, it's kind of counterproductive from the Russian point of view. But I don't think they get that. I think they're dealing with weapons that are not capable of doing what they need them to do militarily. And they've got this cultural ethnic bigotry going on that they're fine wiping out Ukrainian cultural sites because they don't view those as valid cultural sites. It's the Russification idea that the Tsars and the Soviets did and Putin would be happy to do again.
I found something I disagree with Mike on.
Uh-oh. I want to hear it now. Let's fight.
Yeah, it's not that they think they're not valid cultural sites. It's quite the opposite. The fact that, that this is older than Moscow steals some of the legitimacy in their eyes from their culture and their perceived cultural superiority over Ukraine. They have to erase Ukrainian history because it is an older Slavic culture, right? Moscow was a long, long time ago started as a colony of Kyiv, right? So this is something that in the eyes of, Russian superiority is a threat. So they target these things that are really old landmarks, really old history, in a way to try and erase Ukrainian cultural identity. And the reason why Putin really hates Ukraine is you have this culture on the border of Russia that loves liberty, that loves democracy, and is exporting that in the Russian language to Russian people. That's the real threat of Ukraine. Because if the Russian people ever embrace that, it's the end of Putin and any regime like him. That is the existential threat of Ukraine.
Now, I do have a friend who he was buried in Russian missile attack. He was a frontline soldier near Sloviansk at the time, but it was the building he was sleeping in collapsed on top of him. So the other side of this is that he is having some issues now with the ballistic missile attacks on Kyiv because it's an entire nation with PTSD, and trying to talk to him and talk him through has been rough the last couple of weeks. So it does have an effect on the Ukrainian people that's unfortunate. But one of the reasons that they're going after Moscow and St. Petersburg right now is they're just tired of it. You're going to feel my pain kind of a thing. And fortunately, the Ukrainian weapon systems are far more accurate, even if they're still inexpensive. They have a less accurate system. The Flamingo cruise missile is interesting, but it's not overly accurate. So what they use it for is they went after a factory twice or three times as far away as Moscow, and it built components for various missiles, including satellite communications and GPS guidance and a few other types of components. So yeah, Ukraine has its own version of that where they have less accurate munitions. What do we actually use them on? And a giant factory that takes up a square mile is a great thing to go after with a fairly inaccurate weapon. Of course, it has a giant warhead. It's like a 1,300 kilogram warhead. It's just a huge warhead on the Flamingo missile, so it can do a lot of damage.
Anything else in these emails I should bring up next?
If you want to talk, one of the things we didn't talk about last time I was here was the Ukrainian fortifications in the fortress belt. Just to give people a sense of how Ukraine is defending, and one of the aspects, I mean, David covered it really well with the battlefield air superiority achieved through drones that Ukraine's been able to manage. This is not quite what I was looking for, but I think it might have been on that email. Picture that you were on, this is the Russian fortifications that we know about. And on the left side of the map, that's where the 2023 Ukrainian offensive faltered. They couldn't get through those. But David's right. These have been thoroughly softened up. And if you've got Russian soldiers incapable of defending them, then the built-up fortifications don't overly matter as much. They're still
right there.
But
actually, there's that little green circle of fortifications. That is a key alternative target to Crimea, the city of Tokmak.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Rail line runs through there. The highway runs through there. And if Ukraine were to seize that, then the Kerch Bridge would be in long-distance artillery range, HIMARS range, basically. So if they can seize that, then they can completely choke off Crimea and Kherson by complete logistics denial. So that's another option that ends up with the same thing, that Ukraine will recapture Crimea.
And one of the wild cards that we're dealing with here, David mentioned the Mad Max scenario where Russia had to protect its logistics truck convoys from, the savages in the Mad Max wasteland going after your truck convoy. But there are active partisan groups in Tokmak, Mariupol, Melitopol, inside of Crimea, that are operating from the inside, sabotaging things and going after things. The next picture was a screenshot from a video. This is one of the Ukrainian defensive fortifications that just goes on for miles and miles in the Sloviansk-ish direction, part of that Donetsk fortress belt. And you can see the berms and the roads and ditches, and those white things are all dragon's teeth. Those are all about 2 meters tall, so you can't even drive a tank over them. The tank will high center and get stuck. Um, and this just goes on for miles and miles and miles.
And nowadays, there may be an autonomous drone patrolling inside
yes.
of there,
Well,
shooting.
if you look at the next one, this is not really a map. It's more of a diagram of what might be there in its relative positions. And what David was talking about with those drones on top, the video that I screenshotted the previous one from was just a giant observation drone that's always watching these fortifications. And one of the aspects of kicking off Russian logistics is that Russia delivering troops to the front line to conduct offensive operations. 4 years ago, they were able to basically just drive up to the Ukrainian front lines. It wasn't quite that, but they were able to operate with tanks and armored personnel vehicles and even unarmored trucks relatively close to the front line. Now Russia is having to drop off their infantry 10 to 20 miles on the Russian side of the front line, because if they don't, everything's going to get picked off by Ukrainian drones. So the concept of the aerial drones, just the front line drones, forming a significant part of Ukrainian defenses, like David said, is huge. And most of the Ukrainian strength has been in the last year or two, the buildup, because they've managed to achieve not quite air superiority through drones, but a certain version of advantage in the air. It's not like Russia isn't fighting back, but I think that the upper hand is currently Ukraine's.
And I also want to describe how Russia is getting the limited success that they are in places like Kupiansk. It's no longer large Russian convoys.
Yes, thanks for covering this. Yeah.
They're now sending Russian soldiers, usually 2 at a time, to the front, because anything larger gets hit with artillery or missiles. And those Russian soldiers, they get dropped off 2 at a time, and they're hunted by drones. And they're trying to meet up with groups to pool their supplies and get to the front. And not a lot of them do. And they're resupplied by drones at long distance because, again, nothing else of Russian can get to the front to resupply them. So what I'm painting here is a very high cost to take very small pieces of land. And the attrition rate here, even if Russia does eventually take a place like Kupiansk, they're bleeding out in the process. It's been a series of Pyrrhic victories, and in the end, Russia's just grinding itself down.
And they're
hitting the exhaustion point all along the front.
And what David's describing is like the 2026 version of the advance from Avdiivka to Pokrovsk. Something like 1 out of every 5 Russian casualties is inside of 20 miles of Pokrovsk, just as a measure of how hard they have to bleed to take ground. And various places what David's describing with these Russian infiltration groups, they're propaganda only. They'll send 1 or 2 soldiers to raise a flag on a rooftop so that picture can be shown to Putin. Like, yeah, we took this city, we raised our flag on the rooftop, but it's 1 Russian soldier, and that's the only Russian soldier in that square mile, But in Kupiansk, they're sending enough of these individuals that I didn't send you this map, unfortunately, but they'll send a lot of these infiltration groups to actually gain ground. But David's right. They're bleeding out and they're gaining ground, but Ukraine is forcing them to pay such a heavy price. They're trading land for, tens of thousands, if not more, Russian soldiers dead. The price is just huge that Russia is paying just for minimal gains.
Man, what else should we show here, Mike?
I think that was the extent of what I sent you.
Okay. All right. Well, so as we get near the end of the program, where does that leave us tonight with, I guess, both of these wars? Can you guys provide some final thoughts to give us perspective?
Yeah, as for Iran, let's see if the peace holds. It has to hold in two places, but especially in Lebanon, because Iran has made their holding to this deal contingent to peace between Hezbollah and Israel. And I have serious questions about either side really holding to that in its present condition. So we'll see. But hopefully it does hold. The price of oil comes down for everyone. And that'll be good for everyone. It'll be good for Canadians. It'll be good for Americans. It'll be good for Iranians. It'll be good for Ukrainians. It will only be bad for Putin and his war efforts, which again becomes good for all of us. Finally, I'm starting to see that without Putin getting a major bailout, without a major change on the Russian side, which eventually it's going to come. Russians do adapt, but Ukrainians are adapting quicker. And I think that we're nearing the end resolution of this war. Russia has attrited itself, and they cannot keep this up. Putin's going to keep driving it. He doesn't want peace. Zelensky recently reached out to him, say, let's come together for peace, and Putin denied it. So he's still committed because he can't show weakness. But eventually he's going to have a vulnerability, and somebody is going to decide that they can replace him in Russia.
Mike?
I can't really add anything to the Iranian thing. I mean, I hope it's done. It was the dumbest war that I can remember. Just from the get-go. I don't know why we started it, and I just hope it's done. I have the same misgivings David has. For the Ukraine war, I think inside of the last 12 months, and certainly inside the last 6 months, Ukraine has been doing so many things right, and Russia has not adapted. And it's given Ukraine an advantage that kind of makes me smile most days, which is not where I had been on this, watching my friends suffer. That it gives me hope that this will end in the relatively near future. But it's just one of those things that Russia, I think, is going to reach a breaking point at some. And Ukraine's pushing at all of Russia's weak points right now. Their supply, their factories, their oil revenues. Their two big cities now are no longer off limits. Russian civilians and mill bloggers are starting to push back against the government, which is a big difference even from just 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. I think at some point we're seeing cracks. The question is, how many cracks can they actually endure before it just shatters? And I think at some point we're going to reach, assuming Russia doesn't give up, at some point we're going to reach a shattering point, and Russia's just going to stop. Maybe that's a pipe dream, maybe not, but I'm seeing a lot of indications that Russia's really starting to struggle just doing basic things.
Okay. And with that, we're at the top of the hour. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you, gentlemen. I greatly appreciate your help with this as we try to understand what the heck is going on over there. And I guess just finally, one last thing. Once again, Obama vindicated on the JCPOA.
I already answered, David.
Yeah, on that point, yes.
Okay. All right, folks. No movie tonight. I was going to bring you the 1946 David Lean adaptation of Great Expectations, a Dickens classic, but we'll save that for the next Maverick Midnight Matinee. I will be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, though, on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.